Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Glad that you could join us once again. In this segment, we're going to be speaking with Dr. Sarah Ringold. She's joining us here from the Janssen Pharmaceutical companies of Johnson & Johnson to talk about the US FDA approval of STELARA for the treatment of pediatric patients who are suffering with active psoriatic arthritis. Welcome to Health Professional Radio. Dr. Sarah Ringold, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate you taking some time to discuss this development.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Well, tell our listeners a bit about yourself and tell us about your role at Janssen.
I'm a pediatric rheumatologist, and I serve as a clinical director in drug development and immunology at Janssen. Specifically, I work on the pediatric development team, which means I specifically work on developing pediatric indications in the rheumatic space for new drugs and indications.
Pediatric psoriatic arthritis, is it simply that it's active in children, that it's pediatric psoriatic arthritis, or are there differences in pediatric psoriatic arthritis as opposed to psoriatic arthritis found in adults?
So it's considered to be mainly a spectrum. In pediatrics, we use a different classification system than used in adults. So in children with pediatric psoriatic arthritis, they're by definition less than or equal to 16 years of age when they have disease onset, and they have some other associated features like psoriasis, enthesitis, dactylitis. Dactylitis is sausage digits, and may have some other features like uveitis. Many of these features are shared with adults with psoriatic arthritis, but it's also considered to be somewhat of a different disease because it can manifest differently, particularly in younger children.
What are some of the symptoms, and are they easily identifiable from some other type of rash?
So in general, this diagnosis can take some time to make and generally requires some input from different specialists, including dermatologists and rheumatologists. The rash in psoriasis is generally similar to what you see in adults with thickened plaques and can be differentiated from other rashes like eczema and poison ivy in consultation with your doctor. Some of the other findings, like joint inflammation, can be hard to detect in younger children who may not necessarily complain of joint pain or who may manifest symptoms differently. So generally it requires a full joint exam and evaluation by a rheumatologist. It's also important to exclude other conditions that can cause joint pain so that you're certain with the diagnosis prior to moving forward with treatment.
Are there certain things that parents and maybe teachers should be looking for in kids that would trigger a red flag response?
So in general, anytime a child has joint pain that's limited in their usual activity, that's something that they would want to work up with their healthcare provider. Joint swelling, loss of range of motion, pain in the joint, those are all some things that should be brought to their physician's attention. Also changes in normal activity. So a child who, toddler who may not be verbal yet may not be able to express it to their parent that something hurts, but they may be noticed to be moving slowly in the morning or limping or otherwise not engaging in their usual activity. And those are symptoms that the parent or caregiver would want to bring to attention to their doctor.
Now, obviously, nobody wants kids to suffer, but what was the reason that Janssen sought this approval for STELARA for this particular indication?
So Janssen really recognizes that juvenile psoriatic arthritis is an important category of juvenile arthritis. It can be hard to treat, and it can certainly impact patients and their families' quality of life, their ability to participate in normal daily activities. It can cause pain, and over time, if not appropriately treated, it can lead to joint damage and disability. So Janssen really recognizes the importance of treating this disease and the need for expanded treatment options for these families.
What was some of the research and maybe some of the trials that were done in search of this approval for this indication? What were some of the key findings that made STELARA a great candidate for this?
So, STELARA is the first and only biologic targeting both cytokines called interleukin IL-12 and IL-23, which are known to play important roles in inflammation in psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis and other disease processes. So the approach that Janssen took was with this FDA approval was to use an approach called extrapolation. This is borrowing of data from other clinical trials in related conditions. So in this case, Janssen borrowed data that were generated from pediatric psoriasis trials to look at pharmacokinetic, also called PK, and safety data, and then they borrowed efficacy data from the adult trials in psoriatic arthritis. This approach is really important because juvenile psoriatic arthritis is not a very common disease. So as you might imagine, fully enrolling a large clinical trial in this disease just isn't feasible. So this approach was really important in finding ways to get effective and safe treatments to children in an efficient way.
Now, I'm not sure if I asked you before, what is the age range for this approval?
So the age range is for this indication for pediatric psoriatic arthritis is greater than equal to 6 years of age and up.
Is there a particular reason why it starts at 6 years of age and up?
So this was really based on the disease epidemiology and features that are present and the patients most likely to benefit.
What are some of the known side effects in children with psoriatic arthritis? Are they similar to the side effects that adults would experience using the same compound?
The safety profile of STELARA has been established through several trials now, including the pediatric psoriasis, adult psoriasis, and the adult psoriatic arthritis clinical trials. And the safety profile is expected to be similar with just close monitoring for infection and injection site reactions can be some of the most common. But overall, the safety profile has been previously well established in these other clinical trials and is expected to be similar in children with psoriatic arthritis.
Doctor, what does this FDA approval and treatment option actually mean now for patients and their families?
So it's an important addition to the treatment options that pediatric rheumatologists and adult rheumatologists who treat this condition can use. And it's exciting for families because one of the fears that patients and their families may have when they get this diagnosis is, will there be a treatment that's effective for them, or will they have a treatment that's effective, but then over time they can't tolerate it, or it loses its effectiveness. So having additional treatment options available is really important and is an exciting, like I said, an exciting step for families to know they have one more treatment option for their child.
Well, doctor, is there anything that you'd like to add for our listeners, and then give us a website where we can learn more?
So I just would really like to highlight that, Janssen's work on STELARA has brought forward another treatment option for children with psoriatic arthritis, which we know may be hard to treat. So we're excited that there's a new option available for families. We're also excited about the use of the extrapolation approach, which hopefully will benefit additional products in the future. The website to go to is STELARAHCP.com.
Well, I thank you for joining us here and lending us some of your time this evening.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Dr. Sarah Ringold. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Listen in, download at SoundCloud, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com, Health Professional Radio.